All right, greetings and welcome to Conflict Radio. Today is February 22nd, 2021, and we have some very special guests with us today. We have Chad and Al- Alta, I'm saying it wrong, Dillard.
Alta.
Alta Dillard. I started to say it right, I think, and then I went and corrected myself to say it wrong, and I knew I was saying it wrong when I said it wrong. So they have written a book called Orbducted in the French Quarter. Chad and Alta, how are you today?
Oh, we are doing awesome. How are you, sir?
Not too bad. I've got a ton of questions for you guys. You guys sent me this book in,
Awesome. How are you,
and I
sir?
just want to say hello to everybody in our live chat. Ivan and Don M, how you guys doing today? You guys sent me this book in the mail, and it really is a fascinating read. And I guess the first thing we should do is have you guys explain to the listeners who you are, and then we'll get into your story.
So this is Alta, and you call me anything you like, Michael. We're just happy to be called. Uh, Chad's kind of handing it off to me to sort of frame this uh, connection of him and I. We, I first of all, am 10 years older than Chad. We met, or I call it arranged, in 1990. But prior to that connection, I had lived a very, what I call a lot of mystery in my history, my early life, a lot of mystery. And I've never been able to really get any kind of answers. I'm an only child, I'm told. I was raised primarily by a mama. I had a stepfather until I was 15. Again, there is a lot of mystery, and I just don't think we have a lot of time to expound on much of that unless, I'm questioned or I'm asked. Uh, just kind of fast forwarding, my stepfather passed when I was about 15, so primarily only raised by a mama. I'm going to move us forward to actually the connection or the arrangement, what I call arrangement with Chad in 1990 that people seem most interested in. Um, it was Little Rock, Arkansas. My mother had moved there in the late 70s. She had become what I call a fairly powerful self-made woman in that community. It was a place that I found fascinating when I first got there. I was about 19 or 20, first year of college, second year of college. But it was the South, and I was not familiar with the South. It was a very different world. So I found that I would come in and go out a lot, meaning I would leave the state for periods of time, and then I'd always come back. I was a mama's girl and very connected to her. I'm told I am of mixed native blood from a reservation area of Arizona originally. Again, as I say, I have a lot of mystery, but I was raised with the culture. I've always had my traditional clothing, my traditional regalia. My mother was very involved in the arts and also the education of native cultures and history, and also the correction of it for many people. Um, when we moved to Little Rock, she got very involved in the community there. She started university late in life. She was 40 years old. One day woke up and said, literally, I want to make money like a man, and I'm tired of being treated like a woman. And again, remember, this is the early 70s. When she started university, she wasn't sure what she wanted to be when she grew up, and all of a sudden walked into university and decided it would be law. So the short story on that is Bill Clinton happened to be my mother's first law professor. That was just bizarre. Not so much I thought at the time, because nobody knew who the Clintons were back in the 70s. They became kind of a dynamic little duo, and so she made quite a name for herself in the community. Again, with that privilege of having her well known, if you will, and she was like a mama bear, so I always felt somewhat safe in any of my involvements and friendships and connections with the city. Um, Now, again, I'd left for many years, and then I had returned. Now, again, back to 1990 and the meeting of Chad. It happened to be Valentine's Day. I was single. I was 33 at the time. I'd never been married, no kids, nor had I had any interest in either. At that time in my life, I just didn't see that ever happening in my world. And ultimately, I started a new job. I have to admit, it was my first week on the job, and I didn't like it at all. I really was not equipped for the job that I had taken. I am not technically sound in any regards when it comes to anything technical. And I took a job selling medical equipment. It was almost hysterical because I have a very hard time with computers, period. Uh, so anyhow, I'm on this job. I'm a very unhappy girl. And I'm trying to figure out again what I want to be when I grow up at this point. I work with a guy. His name was David. He happened to be a young guy, a young married man with a new baby. And he couldn't stand the idea that I was single without a date on Valentine's. He decides he's going to arrange this blind date. I don't want a blind date. I'd never had one before, and I wasn't interested. And I made that clear. Well, he didn't care. He ignored me, and he's making this phone call. Um, as the phone call takes place, I'll try to speed this up. What I'm hearing is the guy seems real receptive on the other end, but he can't make the date because he has to work that night. So when David hangs up the phone, I find myself like very upset, very frustrated. I don't want a blind date, but I can't get one. So now I'm very upset with myself, and the day's not going well. I'll have Chad at this point pick up this part of the conversation, and he knew David, this guy I worked with.
Yeah, David had called me and asked if, what I was doing that Valentine's. Again, I told him that I had to work, but, I was interested. So, I go on. I was working at an oyster bar at the time there in Little Rock, one of the original oyster bar there, very hot spot, famous place. So I do my shift, and it was nothing but guys that worked there. So after the shift, of course, none of us had dates because we all had to work. So we decided to go to like this local pub down the road that was like a dart. It was a sports bar, and grill.
Mm-hmm.
So we go over there, and we're all going to go play darts. Well, I decide that I don't want to play darts. I'm going to go play pinball by myself, leave all my buddies, which is kind of weird usually because I'm a, social butterfly kind of thing. And so I go over and I start playing pinball, and all of a sudden I see this lady sitting at the bar, and I'm like, well, she's kind of cute. So I kind of walked over there, and I'm like, would you like to play pinball? And she kind of looked at me kind of funny. She goes, I hate pinball, but I'll play a game with you. So we went over and we played a game of pinball. And she goes, well, what's your name? And I said, Chad. She goes, I'm Alta. She goes, do you know a guy named David? And I'm like, yeah. She goes, did he call you today? And I'm like, yeah. She goes, well, I'm Alta. We were supposed to meet tonight. Now, this was a place I'd really never been before. I hung out at other places, never really hung out there. And Alta,
As Chad's kind of handing it back to me, I had never been this place before either. So the fact that we both end up in this, now I'd had a lot happen up until then, but again, because of time, just trying to get the connection with Chad kind of rolling so that we can move further along into so much that's happened to us.
Yeah.
Again, a location neither of us had ever been to before. And before, midnight of Valentine's, we're brought together. Now, within 24 hours, I go home with Chad because I find out, now keep in mind, I'm 10 years older than Chad. So I find out that Chad lives at home with his mom. And I'm sort of really thinking about all of that. I haven't dealt with that in a long time in my history. And so a guy living with his mom. So he invites me over there to his home. And he's made it clear that, he kind of shares the house with his mom at this stage of his life. She's at her boyfriend's for the night. So I'm having so much fun with Chad. And let me just say, I'm discovering, because I've become my best researcher of anybody over the years of trying to get answers. It would appear that this is extremely normal, strangely enough, that strangers would meet who feel familiar or connected. So that's exactly what was going on with him and I. There was no age difference between us. I had no sense of any of that. So we go to his mom. We go to his house, him and his mom's house. She's not there. We spend all evening literally like I'm in a college dorm and we're having the time of our life and we're eating and drinking and being merry and,
Yeah, into
playing
the
music
morning. No, yeah, no kind of fooling around. We were just
and hanging
talking,
and
just
just having the
hanging.
best of time.
Yeah.
Okay, so now it's morning time. His mama comes home because she's got to change clothes. She works for doctors. She's got to put a uniform on and go to work. As she comes in the house, Chad's introducing us. Now, at that point, I'm trying to find an exit door because I'm just very out of place. Well, I didn't need to be. She was very comfortable. She was lovely, very friendly, but she's in a hurry. She got to go change clothes. As she goes through the house, Chad's like introducing, hi, Alta, this is my mom, her name, and then, Mom, this is Alta, right? So she says hello, and then she goes on about her business. She goes into her bathroom. Sometime a little bit later, she calls Chad in the room. Now I'm really nervous because this is creepy, and I'm just, again, trying to find an exit door. And Chad comes back after a few minutes and with a very interesting kind of puzzled look on his face. And what this all comes down to is his mother has processed my name, Alta. Now she is reminded and then tells Chad, do you know your grandfather? Now, what she means by that is her father, who had died before I came into the picture,
Yeah.
had a lot to do with the raising of Chad. Very instrumental. Chad's got a very tight family. He has his father as well, very close to his father as well, but we're talking about a grandfather, her father. Well, the world knew him as George. And that's how Chad would have known him, by the name of George. And Chad called him, of course, Papa. But in reality, we just discovered that George is a name he made up all his life, and that he had his birth name that's on his gravestone is Alta. Now, that takes my breath every time I repeat that. Not only is his first name Alta, pronounced the same as mine, but his last name is Duncan. That's my mother's last name. Now, I have, again, a lifetime of mystery with nobody to clarify anything for me in records and family and, as so often folks do. I will just say that was such a shock to my system. Chad didn't know it at the time, but I must have put on an act of all acting because I was so happy to be with him and to spend this time with him. And then all of a sudden, the shock of this name overwhelmed me. Now, a lot of people don't understand this, and I don't understand anything either. I just repeat exactly as I experienced it. I led Chad on to think that we were going to get together very soon after this, first meeting, and life was going to be just great. When in reality, what was going on inside of me was Alta was saying, never again. I will never see him again because I don't know what's going on, but I don't like it. I felt, again, I'd already had so much mystery. That was just bigger than I could comprehend.
Yeah.
And,
So you guys believe in soulmates,
I
right?
call it arranged.
Alta calls it arranged.
And then I'd like to
Arranged, yeah.
mention
Well, that's the
that,
same thing, and
because,
when you say that, that's kind of the same thing.
Oh, yeah.
sure, absolutely. My word, though, I found, because that's how it always registered inside of me, a weird word. And then probably about 15, 20 years ago, a woman came out with a book, and she's quite famous in her own right. Her name is Eve. Oh, and I just lost her last name. Eve, it's there. But anyhow, the title of that particular book is The Alien Love Bite. Well, that was a shocker. Really? Somebody who's very educated has written a book about apparently many of us who have been arranged,
Put together.
put together
All right.
for whatever all those various reasons are. So, yeah. So that was our, our first beginning. So,
All right. Well,
so
let's
I,
hang on a second
I,
because we've got everybody dropping into the chat now. I guess we've got quite a few people here. Apex, how you doing? Kayla, hello. Renee Cruz, hi there. B Moss says hello.
yes.
Alta, I'm here. or Alta,
Yes.
I'm sorry.
No.
Want to say hi to Mr. Fox. He says he thought the Men in Black got us. So we didn't have a show on Thursday. We had a last minute cancellation, and I couldn't get anybody to come on to the show. So we just decided to take the day off on Thursday, and we didn't do a show. Want to say hello to Chuck Bam and Mark Eddy. How you doing? Ivan Langley again. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask them as we go. All right, and I'll ask them as we go here. So, dude, I've been saying and thinking the very same thing, and know if we could all play good live music, the world would be a lot better place. Hey,
Mm,
live
mm,
music. Was
mm.
there live music that night you guys met?
No, this was more of a sports bar. I don't remember. I think they had a jukebox,
Yeah.
you know,
A good one,
a good
but
jukebox,
yeah,
but
you're
I
right.
don't
Live
remember
music.
the live music
That's right.
there.
All right. So
Yeah.
if you guys in the in here listening can go ahead and give a like on that video. It really helps get the word out that we're live.
Mm,
And
mm.
well, let's get into some of the. What was the first paranormal experience you guys had together? Was it the UFO in Louisiana?
I would say the first was the arrangement, because as I said, there was a lot to that that led up to Chad and I meeting of that night. Um, and then following that, we didn't see each other for 3 months. I disappeared, literally. I didn't go poof, but I just disappeared, where he couldn't find me. And then there's more strangeness involved in our reconnecting there. We got reconnected. And then 3 months later, and then from that moment on, we decided that's it. We're together. We're going to make this work. We had a whole lot more stuff happen to us. Uh, High strangeness. I use the word high strangeness for everything. Um, I borrowed that term many years ago from Linda Moulton Howe, if I'm not mistaken, who maybe coined the phrase, but whatever, it suits my everything I'm trying to explain, because so much I can't explain. So once we reconnected, we then got on with life, and we married a year later. We come together in 1990. We married in 1991, and I'm just curious. I'm not hearing Jared on your show this evening. I've listened to you several times, and I've so enjoyed your show, Michael. And I've heard Jared in the background, if I'm not mistaken, that's his name. And if I am also correct, he's from Minnesota. If I'm remembering correctly. Well, I always found it interesting. Chad and I got married in Minnesota, in Rochester, Minnesota, actually. I was sort of liaison with the Mayo Clinic there. And so we spent a couple of years in the Minnesota region, and then we moved further along into our life. We left Minnesota. We moved up into the Blue Ridge Mountains for a period of time. And then my mother, back in the story again, she decided to leave Arkansas and move to Louisiana. Her objective was, she was retired at this point. She was a native elder. She was highly admired for her knowledge and education, and she wanted to teach people about the crafts, the arts, and what have you. So somebody had invited her to come to Louisiana and move on to their large property, their acreage, somebody she knew well, a husband and wife, and they were starting a petting zoo and a small Western community, like Old West.
Like a little village.
Like a little village, right, with most people call them teepees. I've always used the word lodges, set up all over the property, and they would bus children in. And this was going to be, like a educational situation. So Mom asked if Chad and I wanted to come there and join in on this what sounded like a wonderful opportunity for us to be together, work, and kind of keep the arts alive. So we jumped on board and we moved to Louisiana. Things didn't last very long there, and it kind of all went sour fairly quick. My mother decided to go back to Arkansas, back to Little Rock, and Chad and I stayed. We chose to stay. So at this point now, we're living just outside of a small community called Hammond, Louisiana. When I say small, it's getting large fairly fast. It's almost seeming to get connected to New Orleans. But it's how far, Chad? 30 minutes again?
Yeah, it's on the other side of Lake Pontchartrain. It's on the North Shore.
And so I'll have Chad pick this back up. Our first UFO experience together happened in this area. Now, this would have been about 1994, the end of 94, right, the end of 1994.
Yeah, that was about the time I was in Hammond.
Oh, really?
Hammond, Louisiana.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Yeah, okay, so we were coming from,
well, then you know that.
what's that, Livingston Parish.
Mm-hmm.
And we were coming from that way. We were going into town, and you go around this big group of trees, and there's the Walmart shopping center just off the interstate there and all. Well, when we get around this group of trees,
The super Walmart.
the
The
Walmart,
super-sized Walmart.
we both look up, and there's this craft.
Sorry, it's still light out. We can see.
Yeah, we're going in for dinner, so it's early evening. We get around this group of trees, and we look up, and this craft, it took up the whole sky. It was just huge. I mean, well, maybe not the whole sky, but it was huge. It was bigger than the shopping center, the parking lot, the other
All the surrounding
shopping
area.
stores around. It was very black, almost like in very
You guys
black.
there? Yeah. All right.
It had it was a little wider in the back on one end than the other, almost like a
Almost trapezoid is what he's
Trapezoid.
trying to describe. I was in shock, so I turned my head instantly and I refused to look at it. It was that large. Just so you all know, what he's describing is what he says we saw, because I wouldn't look.
yeah. There was a couple of lights on the shorter end, three or four lights on the back, the larger end.
Was it round or was it triangular?
More trapezoid,
Trapezoid,
wider,
like a triangle, but with not a point, and not
very
real
hard
wide.
to describe,
Yeah,
and massive. So huge.
almost like a obelisk kind of,
Mm.
a very,
No sound,
box, no sound.
no
There
movement.
was nobody reacting because that is a busy intersection through there. No, there was no cars pulling over. I look at Alta, she looks at me.
I'm just staring at him.
I look back up at it, and I guess the light changed, or with the traffic, flowing. We didn't stop and take pictures. This was before cameras and all that kind of stuff on your phones and all that. So we went to dinner that night.
Plus, we were in shock. I was
Yeah.
in shock. People have asked us many times about this picture taken. I guarantee you that'd been the last thing on our minds. I just needed that not to be happening. That's what shock will do
How
to
high
you.
up off the ground do you think it was?
Below cloud level.
Yeah, it was below cloud level.
Okay.
It was way up there, but it was below cloud level.
And it didn't seem like anybody else was seeing it?
Right. I didn't see any kind of reaction of any other vehicles or people, freaking
And again,
out.
I was in shock, so I wasn't seeing anything around me. But
Yeah,
Chad's
and
side of his
keep in
face.
mind about the pictures back in. I guess you're saying this was 94, 95. There weren't
Right.
camera phones back then, and
Right.
if there were phones, they didn't have cameras on them. At least not until
Mhm.
99, 2000 did we really start getting those crappy flip phones with the
Right.
cameras in them.
Yeah.
So
Right.
it's not like everybody drove around with a camera on them back then. Like I guess today everybody has a camera on them. Today it'd probably be a little different.
Oh yeah.
Well, we ultimately went on to our dinner and so on, but we absolutely were not going to discuss it. It didn't happen. It was a non-event. Again, shock will do very strange things to you. You don't understand until you're experiencing it. But the next morning, as it would be, it was either we're both a little confused on where we heard it. It was I'm remembering I thought it was the radio news in the car. Like when you get in the morning and you turn your radio on, the local news, whatever it was, I'm pretty sure it was the radio, indicated that we weren't the only ones that saw that. UFO had been reported by others. And so they announced that. So This event that I was working very hard to be convinced did not happen. We made it up. I'm crazy. Whatever the case may be, others witnessed because they called it in. So then that made it reality for him and I. That once again, we both shut down to it. We never discussed it again.
Really?
Not brought it
And
up.
if nothing ever would have else happened to us, we probably would have never brought it up.
I'm sure we wouldn't have. Who knows?
So you didn't talk about it amongst yourselves even?
No.
It was like
It was
our
a
brain
non-event.
exploded.
Yeah.
You know, it was
My brain did
just
explode.
too big. It was just too big.
It was too
just
big.
I mean,
and plus neither of us had interest in anything sci-fi prior to this experiencing.
Did you notice any smaller crafts like maneuvering around it?
I did not notice any. If there were, there could have been. I don't know. I didn't notice any.
And I wasn't looking. So that was our first, obviously, experience. We shut down to it. We went into denial. And again, though, but neither one of us have ever been able to forget we heard it on the radio. We knew that others had seen it, so we know it happened. Then we moved relatively shortly after that to the French Quarter. We decided to move into the French Quarter. And we are not prepared for that at all. We had never had children. We don't have children. So we had the luxury to be able to make decisions that maybe other folks wouldn't make. We were very nomadic and we weren't answering to anybody, and we just decided, French Quarter's calling us, let's go. So we moved, and when I say we were not prepared, it's very expensive to live in the French Quarter, very. We didn't have jobs. We just were not prepared. Our first experience, now this takes up shows just in itself that we found in the past that we've been invited to do, with just the experiences of living in the French Quarter and the high strangeness all associated with that. So we're in 1995, we now have moved to the Quarter. Our first apartment, because we had no idea what we had moved into as far as the Quarter and the life of the Quarter and so on. Our first apartment happened to be on the perimeter of the Quarter, on the kind of the outskirts. It was the French Quarter, but it was those outer streets.
Yeah.
The French Quarter is about 13 blocks square, and that sounds like, Michael, you have had some travel in your life. We're loving to hear you connected to Hammond. We've never met anybody familiar with that area, but if you don't know the French Quarter, it's like 13 blocks square. So we're living on the outer perimeter street across from the Louis Armstrong Park. And the apartment we move into happens to be above the authentic, original Voodoo Temple. Well, we discover real quick we're in way over our heads because we're not interested in voodoo or hoodoo. I'm mixed Indian with all of my background. Chad's
Southern,
little Southern white guy from, Southern
Arkansas.
Baptist, Arkansas, yeah. He's kind of got his realm. And
I didn't know what voodoo was.
yeah, we didn't understand none of that stuff. And we're right there. And the ghosty stuff and the...
A lot of paranormal events in that apartment. Just
a time
very
slip took
bizarre.
place there for me where I felt that I had been transferred back. The buildings we were living in were 300-year-old
All right.
properties.
Let's back up a second. When did you have the experience with I guess I want to get to a part of the book where you talk about, I guess, the neighbor that you had that the police were harassing you about. Was that before you moved to the French Quarter?
We're looking at each other confused about. No, we had a girlfriend in the beginning of our connection, which is why I bypassed the whole story. She was my best friend. I worked with her. At the time, we worked in radiology. This was in Arkansas, in Little Rock, Arkansas. She lived a mile away from Chad and I when Chad and I first started living together in our new little love abode, and she got murdered. And we got caught up in the most insane of experience of dealing with police and that murder. And I'd like to mention it took 20 years for that murder to be solved, but in 2010, that murder was finally solved through DNA.
So it has been solved. That was my main question. That
took 20 years.
Whether or not that was taken care of.
20 years for that monster to be found.
It was kind of a tragic event in our life.
Well, it was
Yeah. I didn't
huge.
mean to bring it up.
Absolutely.
I was
No,
curious.
No, no,
no,
no.
I
oh,
didn't
no,
hear
no.
anywhere if that had been solved or not. So that
Right.
was.
So, right, it took 20 years and hallelujah, it was solved. And keeping to the format again of the quarter and then building into the Orbducted
All right.
experience. Um, we love the questions, Michael, so we just love this. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for offering questions to us. Uh, Miss B, I think, is listening. You said B. Moss. I'd like to mention she has been so generous to us since we've come back to, we're now in Alabama again. She's there in the Huntsville area with you. She has a show, Crypto Normal, for folks to please check out. She's a very generous soul, interested in what's going on here with us as well. So we have this lots of high strangeness in this voodoo apartment. And then within a year, we decide that's enough of this. We now are kind of establishing ourselves in the quarter. Chad is an entrepreneur and he's doing very well for himself, kind of involved in all kinds of opportunities. I went to work in a shop that started back in 1929. It was a family-owned business. I call it the family, and they ran it almost, please forgive my language, like a mafia. They kept it within the family and very tight, all those secrets of running that kind of a business in the French Quarter since 1929. So they'd been in business 70 years when I came on board. And then they were well established. They had 2 shops in the quarter. So at this point, I'm doing really well for myself. So we're both coming along, making the kind of money that you needed to make to live the kind of life you'd like to live. And we take new residents we move out of the voodoo temple into, we're more in the center of the quarter, and we're where everybody wants to live. We're the balcony that you see on television all the time, throwing beads off the balconies, to everybody down below. That's where we're living. And what we moved into was mind-blowing. It was furnished. It was arranged for us by a woman I worked with in the shop I worked with. She ran this building that we moved into. And it absolutely looked like something out of a castle. We had a chandelier in our bathroom. We had chandeliers in our
This
living
was
rooms.
17th century furniture.
Something
original
16th century,
furniture from
Louis the something. And this thing was, furnished. We had a baby grand. I'm only mentioning this because it's the insanity of all of this. A baby grand piano.
And the energy coming from these
objects.
Massive pieces of furniture.
Right.
It's just unbelievable.
Right. Again, energy period, but particularly all of that. So this is where we've moved, and we're very happy with ourselves. And we have the most beautiful courtyard. And Chad has been doing some maintenance down in the courtyard, fixing it. Had a broken fountain. He was putting it all together really beautifully. My mother wanted to move there. So we're now fast forward to 1997. We're a couple years in this experience. Life is beautiful. I am about to turn 40. Chad is 10 years younger, so the perspective, he's 30 at the time. My mom's in Little Rock. She's in poor health. I'm all she has. She adores Chad. We adore her, and we want her to come to us. So we pre-rented her a mother-in-law cottage in the courtyard. She's going to be down below us. We're up on the 2nd floor. Everything is going to just be perfect. We're going to just live life and take care of each other. Well, that was not allowed to happen. On my 40th birthday is when she was coming to kind of surprise me, sort of not, but that birthday thing. And as it would be, she was not allowed to. She went into, they claim a heart attack the day before my birthday. We caught a plane as fast as we could. I have very little memory of all of this because it was too devastating. The bottom line is that my mother died on my birthday. To the minute I'm born, literally, my mother passed. So we are now beyond overwhelmed. And I've been left with all of the inheritance. My mother had a huge collection of native everything, art, jewelry, textiles, everything. So we're having to contend, but I just, I don't care about personal things at this stage. I want my mom. and I can't comprehend this. So Chad's trying to deal with all of this trauma. Now, my birthday's in May. That's the day she died. If you will, now we're going to fast forward 3 months. Everything seems to happen with Chad and I in like a 3-month interval, it seems, from the time of us being brought together. So 3 months further into this story, we are now around September. I have been dying inside, but working on the outside, trying to navigate. But I just really am in a very dark place, and I'm struggling. Chad's doing better than I am, but he's struggling. Again, the loss of my mom was huge for both of us. So I work with this young woman. We call her Christina in the book. She at the time was 24. Again, Chad 30, and I had just turned 40. Age perspective. She had come to the French Quarter. She'd moved to New Orleans from out of state. She's just a fabulous human being. Always has been, because we're still connected to her all these years later. And she's only grown into herself. But at 24, she was pretty amazing. She was coming out of, I believe, Florida. She was like an ocean girl, like a beach baby. She was tall, slender, long. She still is. Tall, slender, long blonde hair, all about nature, all about earth. She's very much all about saving children and animals and Mother Earth, and very committed to it,
Mm-hmm.
and has devoted her life to it. You'll learn here soon. When we meet, she felt so familiar to me. I just felt like I'd known her instantly. And so I don't say that about her, but that she felt that way about me, but certainly I did. And the age didn't seem to make any difference as far as I was concerned. So we got very tight on the job. And then she saw the suffering I was going through with the death of my mom. So one day she asked if I wanted to go out after work and have dinner and drinks in the Quarter. I accepted. Now, we only lived a couple blocks from the shop I worked in. I tell her, let's call Chad. He loves the girls, and the girls love Chad. We're going to call him, and, he'll be part of this party. Okay, great. So the deal is he's going to walk over to the shop. We had a car, but, it's very expensive to have cars in the Quarter. Most, you pay a fortune to keep them parked and what have you. We had decided we're going to do this all on foot, and we're going to start from one end of the Quarter and just make it a night. And we're going to, with no plans, it's all going to be spontaneous. So literally we're going to do that 13 blocks square from one end to the other. So we leave, we step out, Chad meets us at the shop, we step out of the shop. I promise Chad's going to talk here in a moment. I'm just kind of building us up into this experience. When we stepped out of the shop, it was somewhere about 9:30. She's manager, she's got the keys to the shop, so she's locking the doors. I remember instantly stepping out of that shop onto the street saying, it feels weird out here. Now, that's not something I just went around doing. But I did that night because and I don't know how to explain that. The energy felt off. And I remember Chad and her both acknowledging that as well. Well, okay, it's off. Well, let's get on with it.
Yeah,
So
you can always tell when something's up with the energy outside, right?
we certainly did that night.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, absolutely. I'm an energy baby anyhow, and sure, man, we certainly did that night.
All
And
right.
so that was our
So B Moss did want to say that she's still in here, and she
yay.
thanked you for the shout out.
Oh,
Somebody's asking me about Merc on the website. There's no Merc available on the website right now, but I guess we just had to do a whole logo redo. So I guess look for that soon. I just got to get with like a Teespring or something. It's just a matter of sitting down and dealing with that. So Ray Leg and everybody in the chat, hello. Give a like and make sure you're subscribed, because we always get a lot of people that listen to the show that aren't subscribed, and we are talking to Chad and Alta from Orbducted in the French Quarter, and I guess we're getting right about to the part of the story where the night kind of gets weird, right?
Yeah, this is the night.
it's the night. Well, it got weird when we stepped out and took note of it. because then it's only just a couple blocks. We were walking to start on the famous, infamous Bourbon Street. So that's the street we're starting on. We're just going to walk Bourbon across the border. From the time we got to Bourbon, now keep in mind we lived there. So you know your hood, you know your rhythm of your neighborhood, you know the energy of where you live. And I'm just telling you that what we took note of instantly is nothing was whatever is normal, that didn't seem to exist right from the jump. I remember looking around saying, where is everybody? Where is everybody? Now there were a few stragglers, but I'm telling you at 9:30, by this time quarter till, not quite that late, there's no people, and it should have been packed. Even in slow times in the quarter, it's a 24/7 party. It never sleeps. And there were no people. There were no people. And when I say a couple stragglers, I'm guessing at that. I don't remember people, period. And I'm not thinking nothing paranormal. I'm not thinking nothing other than, oh my God, where is everybody? They're both kind of taking note of it as well. We're not, just standing there, just carrying on like I'm sounding right now. But it was to that kind of extreme of feeling it right off the jump. We start the night at our first location. It happened to be, I'll set it up and Chad will take it over. It happened to be a place that Chad first worked. Chad's got a chefing background and cooking background and restaurant background. So when we first landed in the quarter back in 95, he's working on Bourbon in these some of these restaurants and bars. His first place we stopped was a place that he had worked at when we first moved there. When I tell you we knew everybody there, we knew the owner, we knew all the management, we knew all the, for the most part, the hired
crazy
staff.
Bartender
all the bartenders, that's right. So that's where we're going to
band.
stop. And then the description of this place is it's 3 stories. So it's got a bar right off the street that faces the street, kind of in the breezeway. It's open. Then you walk through a breezeway and you've got a huge, beautiful courtyard where the restaurant is generally served, or the folks are served for the restaurant. Then you go up a winding, beautiful, old wood carved staircase to the disco, with the disco ball up there and everything, in the balcony and all the crazies and the what have you.
Well, when we walk in, there's nobody there. The only person that was there was the manager, and he was a guy that I knew. I'm like, we kind of look at him like, where is everybody? What's going on? I mean, they had live music every night. We, like I said, we knew the band, we knew the crazy night bartenders. So we didn't understand, and so we felt very strange. We didn't stay very long. We were like, we were looking for some, activity, some live music, and at least people to talk to. And the manager, something we didn't know, he's a Mardi Gras Indian. And so he takes us up to the upstairs, and he has to turn on the lights and everything. I mean, that's how quiet it was there. And we go upstairs, and he had his Mardi Gras costume, his Indian Mardi Gras Indian costume up displayed on the wall. And he had met Alta's mom. He knew Alta, being Native American, that she'd want to see it. We sat and oohed and awed for a little while and went back downstairs. And we were like, okay. We said our goodbyes.
So as Chad's kind of saying it in this very calm manner, I'll just make note of it for anybody kind enough listening to us. First of all, we knew this guy for a few years. We had no idea that this little black dude was a Mardi Gras Indian. That's bizarre in itself. That's bizarre in itself. Just because of the fact that everybody knew I was mixed and native with all my regalia. And he'd known my mom. We had no idea until this weird night. And all of a sudden, he's got to show us his regalia. It's under a light upstairs in a pitch black room that was supposed to be a disco full of people. And there is no one. There's no one. There's no wait staff. There's nobody. There's no patrons. There's nobody but that Mardi Gras Indian manager. When we're asking questions, where is everybody? I don't remember ever getting a response. Now, what we did get was he offered us a house drink. He made us a house drink. And in all honesty, none of us wanted to drink it, not for lack of trust or anything of that nature. This is family. We've gotten very close to everybody there. It was a matter of we didn't want to stay. We were trying to have a party. I was trying to come out of this funk that I was sinking in over the death of my mom. So none of us remember having anything to drink. We thanked him and off we went. And we're going to carry on our party. We're going to go find a
So
party.
you didn't have any Sprite or water or Coke or
Nothing. No,
okay.
no, no. We didn't stay long enough. We're there long enough, just the way we described it, for him to take us upstairs, show us his regalia, make us a house drink. That took longer than we wanted to be there. We didn't even want him to make us a drink. We weren't staying, so
Yeah.
we didn't. We had nothing. No, we had none. The three of us had nothing that night. So we leave there, and we continue our little adventure. And speeding the story up, we stopped at another spot in the middle of the quarter. Once again, I remember the three of us walking in, sitting down in a booth, and once again, there's not a soul, literally a soul in this place, but a bartender. Okay, nope, we're not staying. We just looked at each other and said, "Oh, we'll just keep this story going."
And this place was a little more local kind of hangout place too. It wasn't like
And so we leave there, and now we're going to go to the end of the quarter to our haunt, a place that we didn't spend a lot of time partying in the quarter, but when we did, we went to this place. And this place was a Thai restaurant on the bottom, and then the second floor is this cool, very cool bar, club. So, and not very big,
and always having live music.
always live music, and we knew the guys that played there, and we're very connected, and so we have to go up kind of a rickety wood stairs to get up to this place. Well, again, for several years, that had been our spot, going to this place. Not on this night. On this night, the three of us go up that rickety stairs, and the door is closed upstairs, and there's a sign. They got a cover charge. Oh, what? What? So, right, that never happened before. So the three of us, by this time, we're getting pissy. I'm getting very pissy because I'd already started off pissy, and I was trying to get happy. And so we're like, what in the... So in our unhappy mood, we pivoted on the stairs and just kind of grumbled our way down the stairs, almost like a cartoon you can imagine. We get back out on the street, we've got one more chance to have something we thought happen that would be considered normal, like a party. And it's just across the block. We don't even have to go, less than a half a block,
Yeah.
I think, walking.
Across the street, pretty much.
Yeah, literally, like just across the street. I will mention we had to pass right on the corner of that street is a fire station. Now, by this time, it's 10:30ish. It's still early, and there's not a soul showing around that fire station. I remember when we walked past it, I got creeped. It was dark, no lights on, no signs of life. I'm still not thinking nothing paranormal. I'm just over it. It's like, what in the world is going on tonight? So we cross the street, and where we're headed is a place called Checkpoint Charlie's. So Checkpoint Charlie's is just a big old dive. It's a dive. It's a biker dive kind of looking place. So it's where all the locals, all of us who live there kind of would gravitate to. But most importantly about this dive is it's where all the famous, when they got done making all their money and all their big gigs, when they just wanted to hang, that's where they'd hang, and it'd be free. It'd be no charge. You wouldn't know because there was no advertisement that they were hiding off in the Checkpoint Charlie's bar. So you never knew who you were going to run into there. It'd be like being kind of in Hollywood. You just never knew. We didn't think about it that way. We weren't into celebrity. It was not important to us at all. It was just the party we were looking for. Well, wouldn't you know, as we come across the street, there's a little blonde boy. I call him a boy. I'd say he was around the age of our friend, in his early 20s. He looked to me, to give you an impression, like a Nirvana dude. I can't think of his name right now. Yeah, if you know what I'm talking about, the singer from
Cobain.
Nirvana, Cobain. Yeah, he had that kind of appearance, if you will, very hip, adorable, and young. And he's supposedly the doorman. Now that's hysterical. This place didn't have a doorman. Unless they had Famous in there and they had a bunch of hula going on. I guess maybe the locals would be doormen.
There wouldn't be anybody to doorman.
But the point is that first of all, we didn't know that. First of all, we see this little blonde dude that's not big enough to be doorman nowhere outside this place. The doors are open. So I see him and I'm like, no, what? So I just kind of blew past him to the bar, to go in. Well, I didn't have to go that far. The doors are open. I looked in. There's not even a bartender in this one. Now, again, we are talking empty buildings, empty. Now, our friend starts visiting with this little blonde dude. So they're at least friendly, and they're looking happy. And I walk away with my lip dragging behind me, just in such a state. So there's about half block down or whatever, there's a stoop. I head for it to go sit on it and go pout. Like, I'm just over it. By this time now, it's somewhere around 11. So we have from 9:30 to 11, we have been out there diligently trying to have something happen in terms of a party, people, celebration. Not only is there no celebration or party, there's no people. When I sit down on that stoop, Chad wanders over towards me, and he leaves our friend and blonde boy standing there having their little visit. And they look again happy, and I'm thinking to myself, well, all is not lost. At least she's found a friend, kind of thing. And I tell Chad, I said, I am so bored. I'm so over this. Chad, I don't even want to walk the blocks home. Let's call a cab. That's hysterical because we've never even seen people out there or cabs. Might I also add, those streets are full of musicians. There was nobody out that night. There was nobody there. There was no music. There was no sound. There was the Twilight Zone. When you hear people say that, we were in the Twilight Zone, and we're sober. Not only are we sober, not only did we not have anything to drink, no drugs, nor did it appear anybody around to drug us, because I'll speak for me, I would have been thrilled to have thought, ultimately, that that's what happened to us, to have an answer to what has been going on with us. That was not the case. So as I'm on that stoop, Chad has joined me. When I say to him about a cab, that's the last thing we know. Now, this is around 11 o'clock at night. We're on that corner. I'll tell you my portion of this, and then Chad will jump right back in. The next thing I know, I didn't wake up. I came to. And I'd like for people to take note of that. That's a huge difference. Sitting straight up, Indian style, like I'm sitting right now on my couch, on my day bed, in the middle of my living room, and it's broad daylight. I've got sun blaring through my windows. As I said, I didn't wake up. I came to, and I was rubbing my arms. I'm in shock again. I have memory. Now, I'm the only one, it would seem, out of the three that night that was returned with memory. The memory I have is of the middle of the experience. I have none about coming off that street.
All right, hang on before we get to that. Let's what time of the day did you wake up? Was it 11 o'clock
So,
or 2 o'clock
no,
or?
so I came to somewhere between 8 and 9 in the morning.
Oh, okay.
So I have from 11 that night until 8, 9 missing.
Did you know where, I guess, your friend was and where Chad was?
No, that's all part of the story.
All
No,
right.
no, I'm beyond mortified. I've got something in my upper arm that wasn't there the night before. And where is Chad? And where is Christina? And that's all that I could think of. And that it's all happening all instantaneous. Plus, I got memory. All of this. Plus, I'm still on the corner the night before.
All right.
All
So
rushing through.
what was your memory? What was the bit of memory that you have?
I'm standing on a crater, on the edge of a crater. It's a huge crater and very deep. And I'm looking down in it, and I'm seeing what appeared to be a metallic building, and it seemed like it was the best description would be like, because this is all happening very fast, like maybe a big metal warehouse or a hangar or I'm not thinking any of this. I'm just taking note that I
Right,
am
and
now
this was
standing
this
on
was
the edge of a
inside the
crater,
crater,
down in the bottom of the floor of the crater.
like a crater from like a meteor hit or something.
Well, and I'll finish. And what looks exactly, it looks like I'm standing on. It looks like I'm standing on the moon.
Okay.
That's exactly what the appearance is around me, like I am standing on the moon. And I'm down, and so there's a lot to the memory. If you wanted me to continue, or we can get back into that
Yeah.
memory.
Well, when you were standing on the crater, did it seem like you had any, like a spacesuit on at all, or?
No,
Okay.
no, not at all. And there was no movement down in the bottom of the crater. There was no movement at all. It was just that metallic structure. My eyes came back upward again, and the crater was surrounded what I thought were lights, orbs of white lights, all the way around the perimeter of the crater. I feel very strongly as I say that to you that those lights were alive, that there was something alive, intelligent, that they were the whole perimeter of this crater. Now that was the beginning of the experience. There's a whole lot more to it.
All right.
And then, but as I said, keeping you in that moment of coming to the next morning, there's no Chad and there's no her. Now, I can see from where I'm sitting on my daybed, I can see into my bedroom, and I see a big lump in my bed under blankets. And I've said this in the past, I keep praying that lump belongs to me. And I've also said, seriously, this is the one time there can be two lumps in my bed, and it is so permissible. But that wasn't the case. There was only one lump. Now, ultimately, there's a lot to the story, but the lump, thank the heavens, is Chad. Chad wakes up about an hour after I come to. So now we got Chad from 11 at night until somewhere around 9, 10-ish, somewhere in that time frame, that he wakes up in bed. He's out of bed at the time I'm coming out of the bathroom trying to figure out what is in my arm. We are kind of moving towards each other very quickly. I'm in a state of panic. He's just so confused. And I can see that in his face, and I'm waiting for his face to tell me he's going to explain to me what happened to us last night. But I can see almost instantly as I'm moving towards him that he's not going to be able to answer me, and I'm becoming very afraid, like I had already been afraid. So then Chad proceeds to let me know how did we get home? Well, that's not what you want your husband to say to you. And so now I'm understanding. Last thing he remembers is exactly what I've said to you. He'll pick this back up here in a minute. But the one thing I wanted to say before I hand this to him to share with you what he experienced is he walks around me. Now, I'm in the bathroom busy with the front of my body because I've got something in my upper arm that is taking a lot of my attention. I didn't check my body out. I didn't have time because I'm coming out of that bathroom trying to make sure that is Chad in my bed and where is our friend? And so what Chad discovers is, Chad.
So yeah, she's showing me this thing in her arm, and I look close, and I could see very long 4 digits hand marks, like somebody was holding her from behind or holding her up, or some, they wrapped all the way around her arm, very long 4 digits.
These were bruises that had no pain, and they only lasted a day or so, and then they just went away like they never existed, with the exception of the object is still in my upper arm. That never went away.
That object is still in your arm?
Yes. And I've had another experience with another object in my wrist.
Have you had it x-rayed?
Right. So the x-ray is in the book. It's hard to see, but there is a picture of an x-ray with the first object in my arm. The second experience happened years later, and I have an object in my wrist that I tried to get it x-rayed. The doctor told me she knew why it was coming to her. She'd been given heads up. And she made it clear to me that it didn't surprise her. It didn't x-ray. She said, I'd need an MRI. I have discovered since then at several $1,000s, nobody seems to care about these objects too much, so I don't have insurance. Unless somebody ever cared, that has to be let go at this stage. I did have a friend come to my home who was an ultrasound tech. She was a traveling ultrasound tech, and she had her own machine. She came to my home because I'm pretty sure she thought I was nuts, and she needed to see for herself. And she saw for herself that I have an object that's in my wrist as well, detected on ultrasound. So just sticking to this 97 experience, I still have the object in my upper arm a couple days later after the bruising goes away. Chad and our friend is missing. She ain't around. And Chad's and I are both doing the you call her, no, you call her, no, you call her, no, you call her.
And
kind of.
And again,
We'd already gone through hell with police 20 years before, or 17 years before, whatever the case was, that we just would like for people to remember. That was not something easy for us to come to terms with, that we were going to have to call and report her missing.
All right.
That was,
So before we get on to what happened to her, I do have a couple questions about waking up. Were you in the same clothing you were in the night before, or did you change? Did you seem like you were missing clothing at all?
are you speaking to both of us?
Yeah.
Okay, when I came to, I'm sitting straight up dressed.
In the same clothing?
Right.
Okay.
And I don't remember how I was dressed.
I feel
can't
like
remember.
I'm remembering Chad he wears jammies, like men jammies. It feels to me like I'm more remembering him changed. I'm not, because I didn't wake up. I came to. Very different.
Yeah.
And I'm still like I am the night before, only I'm now in my house.
All right. So let's go back to your friend.
Well, the point is the friend is missing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I happen to be off, how convenient, for 2 days from work. Chad's, again, an entrepreneur. He's doing his own thing, making his own schedule. So we have 2 days to literally, we dug in. We were terrified. We were beyond terrified. There's no way to describe what we were experiencing. There's no words for it. And so with that said, you could get food delivered in the quarter. We never stepped out. We did not come out of our house for 2 days. We shut everything up and kept it quiet and dark and just waited and waited. We didn't even know what we were waiting for. Basically her. But so 2 days later, I have to go to work. She's still not surfaced. I go to work. I have to be there in the morning. When I walked in, she's there. She's working. I'm losing my mind. And what I discovered, maybe the age difference between us at that point maybe was registering how I was handling things very different than she is and was. What she said to me that I can recall is basically, as I'm coming apart inside, plus I've got this object in my arm, and I have memory. She's made it clear to me that she knows something has happened to her, but that's enough. That's really all she wanted to deal with. She was not interested. She was very interested in what was happening to him and I and whatever, but she's just accepting this as an experience. I've never had the luxury to be able to do that. I'd like to mention also very quickly in regards to her experience. She, again, has no memory. There's no memory for her. But this is what happened to her. 1 minute she's on that corner visiting with that little blonde boy. And the next minute she knows it's somewhere, now it's 11 o'clock for all three of us when our lights go out. The next thing she knows, it's somewhere between 3 and 4 in the morning. And she's now behind the steering wheel of her moving car. Her car is moving slowly. It hit a parked car and knocked off her rear view mirror, which is what jolted her too. The car's in another section of the city from where she parked her car that morning.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that story just gets creepier. I'd like to mention that, again, it's very involved. I'd mention this without all the details because there's just not enough time. She had had an experience very shortly before the three of us had I call it our taken experience, or abducted night. She had had an experience in broad daylight with a young man that she was breaking up with. She called him over to her house. She lived in a duplex. It's on her front porch. Somewhere in the afternoon, broad daylight. She's only a couple inches in front of his face. She's giving him a I like your butt sort of story. I want to see other people. She says, now his name is Will. I call him Dark Boy. He was her polar opposite. Tall, skinny, blonde she is. Very gregarious, very happy person. Her opposite, very adorable, but long black hair, and he had a darkness about him. So I always called him Dark Boy. So when she's breaking up with him, she sees him. Now she's sober, no drugs, no alcohol. She sees him shift into a wolf. A wolf. He did it twice right in front of her face. First time he did it, she shifted her head away. I knew exactly what she was saying to me because that night that we saw that in Hammond, when I shifted my head away and I'm staring at Chad in shock, I could not look back because if I looked, it would make it real. She turned her head instantly from him. When she looked back at him, he had shifted human and then shifted a second time. And when he did it the second time, she said, and I will clean up the language, you just turned into an effing wolf. Now she said it startled, dramatic, and very direct, and she's right in his face. And she said, he in a very startled voice responded to her, you saw that. As if it was never intended for her to see that. I'm convinced that she shared that with me and Chad because she doesn't tell people this stuff. And the only thing that ever made sense to me was she shared this with us originally because I'm mixed Indian. Now, I've never asked her straight up because we love each other and I just don't question. But sharing that with you, this was her experience that night that the three of us were taken. She is just gone through this insanity. And then, just probably within weeks, if that long, prior to the night that the three of us go through this. So she's had more than her share of in a very short amount of time. High strangeness beyond measure. And I'm pretty sure I'm understanding now she didn't want to talk about any of this. And she didn't want to know any more about it. But I did ask her years later if she would. I told her, I said, I cannot go quiet. Nobody is listening to us and nobody's helping us. And this stuff is still happening to us. And so she said, I understand. I don't intend to go public, but I give you permission to speak on my behalf. You can tell it better than anybody, is what she said to us. So I asked her, I said, she never even requested that we changed her name for the book. But we did that, by guidance, by the publisher. But I did ask her for her to put her version of that night in writing, which she did. What we discovered, though, and she discovered it as she's trying to write it, it's becoming very foggy for her. Very, very foggy. She's almost not remembering even walking across the border that night. And again, for Chad and I, it's just as acute as if it's just happened. So that's her experience involved in this encounter. And then Chad, he has no memory, had no memory. He knows, as I said to you, that night and then the next morning and getting out of bed, coming towards me, seeing this craziness with my arms and my body. And then several years later, we left New Orleans and we moved to Alabama in 2001. And about 2002, I found a young woman. When I say I did, because Chad would have gone on all his life, probably never inquiring or anything. But again, I've just never been able to let it go. And so I started inquiring. And we found, actually, I just realized she's from Huntsville, a young woman who, from that area, the Huntsville area, who did therapy, who did regression. So I asked her if she'd meet Chad, and, thinking if they got along, maybe she'd be willing to regress him. And certainly she was. And we worked out a deal, all payment. She drove here, and I think it's 3 hours to Huntsville. She drove here to our home in small town Alabama, and her and Chad went off into a room, and we closed the door behind, and she had her little tape recorder, and Chad apparently regresses extremely easy, and he went into the regression, and I'll have Chad share with you if you're interested in what came out of that experience,
Yeah,
because
of
he's our
course.
only definition of what happened on the corner, how
All
we
right.
came off that street.
All right, Chad. What did the lady from the great city of Huntsville, Alabama, find out?
Well, what what I remember is again exactly what how Alta and I explained it. Nobody out there. The last memory at 11 o'clock. So in my regression, what comes out is Alta and I are standing. She's sitting at the stoop, and I'm standing there. Our friend comes and joins us, and we're kind of mid-block. So, and the next street over is Frenchman, which is, kind of a popular, more local kind of place. Now it's kind of turned into a mini urban street, but, it's a cooler place. So we're standing there in that middle of the block. Out of the corner of my eye, I'm looking through these plate glass windows at this place that's there on the corner, and I could see this bright light coming from around the corner and through the windows. I get the girl's attention, and we walk around the corner. And about halfway down the block, we see this orb. And it's probably, 15 foot uh, high. It's in the sky, above the street, 15 foot above the street. It's probably about 12 foot in diameter. The light that comes out of it was just this white, pure, just live, clean light. We sit there and we see it for 10 seconds or
Like
at the
eternity.
most, yeah. And all of a sudden, it just comes towards us, and it just kind of engulfs us. It takes us in. It orbducts us. My next memory is I'm walking down this corridor. All the walls, the floor, the ceiling, all metallic. I didn't see any rivets, no bolts, no seams. Just very fluid. It was just very smooth. I'm following this little being. He's probably 3.5, 4 foot tall. I can only see him from behind. He's got this pale gray skin tone, big bulbous head. Now, he wasn't thin like the ones you see on TV. He kind of had some weight to him, or he had a little substance to him. He kind of waddled when he walked. Like a
dwarf.
Yeah, like a dwarf. And out of my corner of my eye to my left, I could see a tall blonde female walking beside me. I didn't turn to see who it was. This does describe our friend that was with us that night, but again, I did not turn to see if it was her. So we're following this little being. My next memory, I'm in this room, and this room just seems infinite. It's very, very dark. I could see, my immediate around me, and I'm sitting in this chair almost like a dentist kind of chair, but more comfortable. Off to my left, kind of off in the distance, I could see a tall blonde female laying on an examining table. Now, she was nude, but like her body was kind of faded, almost like censored, like like they censor body parts on regular TV and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
There were three beings around her, and I would say they were like 7.5, 8 foot tall, very tall. They were wearing these cloaks almost like a Grim Reaper, but without the hood part, or a Jesuit priest or something like that, monkish. Um, they looked very almost praying mantisy in the head part. Now their eyes weren't, big bulbous on the top of their head like they were more kind of centered and almond kind of shape. Uh, their arms were kind of crooked and almost like a praying mantis. There was one on each side of her, one of her head. The person that was on the examining table never seemed to be in distress or pain or anything like that. Almost maybe unconscious or whatever. I focused my attention back to my immediate, and I turn and I look over to my right, and there's this little blue being, and he's probably 3.5, 4 foot tall, very thin, like the ones like the aliens you would see on TV, similar. But his skin tone was this just vibrant, beautiful, vibrant, live blue color. His aura, his his energy felt almost like a scientist slash shaman slash just ancient knowledge, professor, just, high intelligence, but almost shamanistic also, if you understand.
Mm-hmm.
He goes over and he picks up this box and he has it in his right hand. He takes his left hand, now he's only got 4 digits. He takes his left hand and he sticks it into the side of the box. And when he brings his hand out, there's this floating substance. And it was kind of like that slime stuff we used to play with as kids, but it was blue, just the same color as he was. It was kind of sustained, it wasn't like dripping or oozing. It was just kind of, very undulating, kind of above his hand. It had little like glitter metal flakes kind of floating around in it. It almost looked like a mini universe kind of thing if you could see that. It just kind of came from, and I don't even remember him setting the box down, but he takes his right hand, again, he's only got 4 digits. He takes his 2 middle fingers and puts them up almost like in a peace sign, and his 2 outer fingers folded in towards his palm. And when he does this, the substance starts spinning, and it goes faster and faster and faster. And the more that it spun and the faster it spun, the blueness and the sparkly, metally, flaky looking stuff kind of dissipated out of it and was just kind of going around it like, orbiting around it like the sun, and the planets and all. It starts slowing down, and it had turned into this little double-pointed crystal, like a quartz crystal, but very clear, very clean, just beautiful, this crystal. And I remember thinking to him, why are you showing this to me? This is something very important. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a scientist. I'm not an engineer. Why are you showing this to me? And he told me that I would know in time, or when it's time. My
So
next memory,
you think
in
he
this,
was manipulating matter?
yeah, yeah. I mean, because this was just like, I mean, it was kind of liquid. It was kind of, very, and you could almost see through it. This mass. And then once it's slowed down, it all the little metal flakes, the blueness had kind of disappeared and dissipated, and it was just this quartz or this crystal. I don't know
Wow.
what it was made of it. So my next memory, I'm in this other room, It's only got three walls, two very straight, one in concave. They're probably about, 15 by 20 size room. There was a big overstuffed leather chair in the middle of the room, and it just seemed out of place to me. Because again, the walls were very, metallic, smooth, no rivets, no bolts, no, just very. And here's this overstuffed leather chair, and I always kind of freak out when I have to, but it's my truth, so I have to, it's part of of my truth. And again, it just seemed out of place. I didn't go sit on it. For some reason, I'm like, it looks comfortable, but it's not. So I focused my attention on this wall that's kind of concave. And I thought it was this solid metallic wall, but when I get a little closer to it, I'm like 5, 6 foot away, I could see through it. It was translucent. And I could see the planets and stars, and, I could see the galaxy, like I'm out in the galaxy somewhere. And I'm kind of just standing there in awe and just kind of looking around. And then all of a sudden, just right outside this wall window, there's this small craft. It's probably maybe 3 foot long, 2 foot wide, kind of almost like a rugby football kind of shape. It zooms past real quick, and then it gets about 8, 9, 10 foot past me, and it kind of stops, and it stops on a dime. It just stops, and it comes back, and it zooms, and it right back, and we're looking, eye to eye, and it's got like little wires moving around and lights blinking on it. I could feel intelligence coming out of it. It was almost like they were inside going, "Look, mommy, at the monkey in the cage," or something like that. It's just kind of what I picked up on it. And, it was like it was just as curious to see me as I was it. And it sat there for maybe 30 seconds and then zoomed off in the way it was going. And then my next memory is waking up in bed the next morning.
Hmm.
I'd like to mention, as Chad's described, best count at least 4 different types of beings, maybe 5. I had an experience, because I'm the only one, as I keep saying, that had memory. And in my memory, I'm with a being that's none of them. Nor was Chad or my friend in my experience. And as you've just heard Chad account his experience, I'm not in his. My experience, I'm standing on, I have no idea of what a reality is, I think, any longer. My brain has been exploded, and I just expand constantly. Chad and I have had the most insane cryptid experiences. We have discovered his father and other family members have seen the same UFO that Chad and I saw in Hammond, only we got ours above a Walmart. His dad and stepmother got theirs partying down in Cancun, but it was the same shape as they've described it to us. His father's had an up close and personal, I use the word Sasquatchy just to take the scary out of it, experience encounter. So this family thing, we're seeming to have a lot of familiarity in our experiences. But in my memory, I'm standing on what appears to be what others would define as how the moon looks like, or I'm in the very distant past or the very distant future of this planet. I never knew, nor do I know, where I was, but I was standing on something. Where Chad's out there, it sounds like flying around in something. And my experience, I'm standing. And as I say, the experience, the being is none of who Chad has accounted. So
do you think you were taken to different places, or do you think you were maybe in the same place but experiencing different things?
Good question.
that's a great question. Our friend is experiencing a shape-shifting Wolfie boy. I call him Wolfie boy in broad daylight on her porch, just outside of, the French Quarter. And then her lights go out completely, and now she's behind the steering wheel of a moving car and hitting a parked car. And it's in another section of the city. And that's her account. And then, as I said, it got creepier for her when she came to. She was taken. That is as if that car was driving itself to Wolfie Boy's house. I guarantee you she would never have seen Wolfie Boy again after him shape-shifting in front of her face.
I
But she
love the
still had
way
to
you say
play that.
Wolfie boy.
I have babied up language from the get. Just the only way to survive all of this stuff. And I'm telling you, Wolfie Boy, let me mention this if I might. Wolfie Boy gets back into the story again years later. So now this happens to us in '97. That's when Wolfie Boy becomes Wolfie Boy to me. Fast forward, haven't seen Wolfie Boy since. Nothing about him. You fast forward now to 2001. Chad and I are still in New Orleans. We have imploded, is my way to describe that. We come apart at the seams, and we decide to part. Chad decides to come to Alabama where his family live. I decide to stay behind in the quarter. I'm working. I come out of work one afternoon. It's a beautiful day. Streets are packed like normal. And I hear somebody yelling my name. Again, Alta, weird name. You normally hear it. So I'm looking, and all of a sudden I see this very tall drink of water who I hadn't seen in years, and his name happens to be Rich. Rich happens to be from Montauk, New York. Well, I didn't know nothing about a Montauk back in the day. I know a lot about that part of the world now, but I didn't back then. And so I just thought he was an odd one anyhow, an adorable, odd character.
Alta,
He's,
have you thought that? I don't mean to interrupt, but have you
no, no,
thought
no.
that maybe you were an MK Ultra baby?
Well, that's interesting you ask. My first memory, as I said to you before, trying to spare you all this, just so you could hear, these account of what happened to the three of us, people seem most interested in. But I find it all fascinating. My mother claims that in 1957, 58, I would have been 6 months old. She claims she's driving a car. I'm the only passenger. We're heading across the desert. To this day, I have no idea what desert she's talking about. She says that I'm from Arizona, that I'm born in Arizona. So you pick your desert. She's driving. She claims broad daylight that a metallic craft, sometimes she'd call it that, sometimes she'd say a small UFO, came down out of the sky and stopped her on the road. Now, the problem with that statement is nobody ever challenged my mother back in the day when she made that statement a couple of times to some people. Because I promise you, she didn't go around advertising that. But she also had no shame in her game either. And when she did trust somebody, which was very seldom, she would make sure that that was said. And when she'd say it, I would disappear. Like I'd crawl out of a room in such embarrassment, I could not believe those words were coming out of her mouth. So the point is, nobody ever challenged my mom, nor did I. So I know nothing more about it. That's the first go-round. Fast forward now to Alta age 9, somewhere in that age range. Alta has no memory from 9 backwards. I have no birth certificate, original birth certificate. I have no baby pictures. I have no what appear to be a beginning. I have photos of me when I started 2, and then there's too many of them. To the day I won't allow a photo now, and I don't go on camera at all. At age 9, first memory clicks in for Alta. She's sitting in what I've discovered is it's a place called Fitzsimmons Military Hospital. It's in Aurora, Colorado. My first memory is I'm being tested for ESP. Now, that memory is very, again, acute because it's my first memory. But then my lights go back out again. And I go back to sleep for a couple more years. From that memory, I'm now in Iowa. Iowa. The middle of the country, Iowa. So I have to say I'm thrilled about it now because Iowa was a fabulous place to be raised in the 70s. So,
Captain Kirk was
uh,
born in Iowa.
absolutely. My mother she loved all that sci-fi stuff. Not me, no interest at all in anything out there. So, with you asking that, trying to answer as quickly as I can, I'm clueless. I have no idea. I have tried very hard to get records from Fitzsimmons because Fitzsimmons is still a Fitzsimmons. they've moved out of Aurora to Colorado Springs. Like so much is going on now in Colorado Springs, if I'm not mistaken. But get those records? No, not even. So because I've had to be my own researcher, my only support, I contacted Grant Cameron many years ago through, in my feebleness on a computer. This would have been, oh geez, like 2000 and
You said Grant Cameron?
right.
Okay.
In about 2000, I'd say 3, 4, somewhere 5 in there, and Alton knows nothing about computers, but I did manage to get a email to him, and I would like to mention, I've written to everybody that exists, and so many have denied responding, like I don't exist, or what we've been through isn't real. But Grant Cameron was kind enough. It was a very short message, but he was kind enough to respond to me. And he basically, I'm paraphrasing it, wished me luck, good luck. That's not going to happen, is what he informed me of. Now, this was many years ago when he was mostly involved in the UFO presidential stuff. He's expanded a great deal since. In fact, our book is on his way to him right now as we speak. Maybe an interest in connecting there. And we certainly hope so, because again, of his interest in Orb and so on and so forth. But the bottom line is I can't get any answers. I certainly try, but that's been a difficult task.
You should talk to Ann Diamond. She's a kind of an expert on the MK Ultra phenomenon.
Right.
It sounds like you've been through the MK Ultra program, and then for some reason they eliminated you from that program from the age 10 or so.
It's just interesting because, how does Chad's grandfather and I have the same identical name? Us being arranged. Again, there was a lot to the story I had to leave out again due to time about us being arranged that night. There's no doubt to me that there were beings that were non-human that made sure that Chad and I got together that night. There was a lot to that story.
All right.
So, again, this MK Ultra, I find it all fascinating, but our circumstances, as I've shared with you, as fast as I can throw as much information in a short amount of time, his family, Chad's family, his father in particular, having so much of what feels like very similar experiences with. Now, father was never in military and has no military background, and Chad doesn't come from any kind of, who knows? That's the whole, what are the odds that his grandfather and I share the same first and last name? It's just.
Well, those are little signs that tell you that you're on the right course, right? I want to say hi to Matt Barnes. He said hello to a conflict just a little while ago. Lee Bodge says hi. I guess there's a few people in the chat. If you guys have any questions, now would be the time to ask. Just write them down. I'm seeing them here as they come across. We are live, so don't be afraid to write them down right now. I guess if you're listening to this tomorrow or in the future, we're not live, but we're live right now, so go ahead and write them down. And I'll ask. I mean, you're up for questions, right?
We love
awesome.
questions.
Yeah, we love questions.
We just never felt like we'd ever gotten enough of them. That's what helps us.
So ask away, guys. I would recommend that you reach out to Ann Diamond. She might be able to connect you with a little bit more of what's been going on. I think Aurora is actually a hotbed for MK Ultra. Did you know that?
Not surprising with all that has happened there, and certainly with. I just was looking at him the other day, a couple of days ago, actually. The dude, the shooter, the theater shooter. I can't think of his name right now. I spend, again, I'm all I have, basically, in the sense of what I've been left with in regards to research and
you're talking about
and
that
so
theater shooting with that Batman movie, right?
Right, in Aurora.
That guy was MK Ultra too. There's a lot of weird things that MK Ultra's behind, and I'm sure we don't really talk about too much of this kind of stuff on the channel because I guess YouTube doesn't like it if you start talking about the truth too much. But I will say that there's definitely a lot to that, And you should consider yourself blessed that you were eliminated from that program.
Mm. I have no thought one way or the other
So it is
about any
something
of it,
to
because the truth is the truth. If you'll notice, I even use the word unknown when it comes to this object in my arm, because I have another unknown that's in my wrist. I refuse the word implant because I have no memory of them being implanted. And I keep trying to get people to expand their minds like I've been forced to do, such as, how do we know it didn't come with a package? How do we know that whatever happened to us that night didn't, I don't know,
Activate.
wake it up or bring it forward or make sure that it was physical, that we would know that this is going on. The second experience that happened to me, the second unknown that's in my wrist that won't take an x-ray. Well, let me just say this. The day that I got the x-rays for the first object, those were prearranged by a group out of Huntsville, MUFON, that set that situation up for us to meet a doctor in small town Alabama. That was one of the craziest experiences of our lives, as if the other stuff we've explained to you hasn't been insane. I will say this to you, that this object wouldn't take a picture the first 2 times. Now, the x-ray tech is losing her mind because you can touch the object, you can feel the object. It's just underneath the top layer of skin, but it refused a picture.
does it move
And
around?
It doesn't move around, it seems to move down. Now, I've often said this, thank the heavens I can't feel nothing moving, because I'm sure I'd have ended my life when this started. To have to live like that, no. But it does seem to bury itself down to the bone, if for whatever reason. But most of the time, it looks like a bug bite on my arm, like a big mosquito bite. When it's choosing to stand out, it seems to change shape. It seems to have a mind of its freaking own, because it would not take a picture. And when she's losing her mind, that radio tech, I literally said to the heavens, throw a dog a bone, I have to have this picture, because that was being requested by Dr. Roger Lear out of California. Now, Dr. Lear has since died, but this was going on long distance, and the only way that Dr. Lear was even going to even consider to talk to little old me was to get that picture first. So something out there finally threw a dog a bone, and on the third go round, it finally took its picture. But
So,
I mean,
so do
it's
you
been
think that there's
insanity.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. Do you think that
No.
there's a connection between the orbs that you guys saw and ghosts? Because
It doesn't.
orbs are technically, I guess they're related to ghosts more than they are aliens, right?
Yeah, I
Not if you
guess,
listen to
but
Grant Cameron now. If
Yeah,
you're not
yeah,
aware of his new studies in the last few years, that's all he is. That's taken him into a whole new path.
yeah. Well, he
It's
goes
all about
into the
orbs.
whole consciousness
That's
aspect
right.
that
That's right.
maybe you guys are seeing and experiencing this stuff because your consciousness is at a level where maybe you're using a bigger percentage of your brain and you guys just happen to be seeing what the rest of us can't see.
Mm.
right.
You know. Uh,
Absolutely.
Lee Bodge
Yeah,
asks, "Have orbs ever been tracked using other spectrums like infrared or other electronic signatures?" I don't have an answer to that. I guess we'd have
yeah.
to get somebody
That's
on.
either.
I will mention, when Chad and I, speaking of orbs, when we first moved to Alabama in 2001 originally, we're I the one thing Alta doesn't do well is being bored, getting bored. So, because the life has just been so strange that, I just don't do well being bored. So I made I don't know if it was a mistake, it was certainly an experience that I'm not sure we'd ever do again. I told Chad, let's go on a ghosty hunt. We'd never done anything like that before. We're coming out of New Orleans, the
Yeah, we
land
didn't
of
have to
ghosts.
go hunt them. They
Yeah,
would be there.
yeah,
Ready to...
it was nothing we were involved in. We didn't care about all that stuff and whatever. But all of a sudden, I decided, let's go on a ghosting hunt in Alabama. So the short story is we end up meeting somebody here that lives someplace here in Alabama, long distance, who she was a group of one, and I liked that because she carried her little tripod everywhere she went, and she was an investigator and so on. she'd learned about Chad and I having this experience in particularly the abduction and all our ghosty encounters and whatever in the French Quarter. So she was very interested in meeting us. And I consider myself as sensitive in its highest regards. Chad as well, but certainly me. And so she wanted to meet us, and so we meet long distance. We don't know where we're going. She gives us directions, whatever. And it's her ghosty hunt. She wants us to meet her at this place. So we drive up, and I get out of the car, and Chad gets out right behind me, and she gets there at the same time. It's an old trailer in an old like trailer park, kind of set up around an old pond, like private property, that she wants us, that she's going to explore. She's been given permission or asked to, do this research in. Well, she's going to check me out. Well, I'm not used to being checked out. I'm no ghosty buster. It was, I don't know what I was thinking. So I get out of the vehicle, and she's got that tripod going and her camera going, and she's picking up a red orb is following me. Now, Chad, you didn't see it, did you? Did you see
No,
it with the eye?
you couldn't see
I
it.
couldn't see
We could only see it after the pictures were.
after it was done.
Yeah.
Because I don't like cameras anyhow, so I'm not even aware that she's doing this. I'm just aware that I'm to go up into that trailer and what comes out of that. Well, as it would be, I was able to do whatever she was looking for me to do, which is tell her that somebody died, and I showed her where they died in the living room on the couch. And she understood right then and there. I had that part right. I wasn't trying to prove nothing. I'm not trying to be a television show or anything like that. I got in over my head. And but the orb thing I found fascinating. On top of all the other crazy, that turned out to be a very crazy day. But apparently that red orb was following me about as I'm moving about.
There's I guess there's speculation that orbs are related to the formation of crop circles as well. We haven't had a crop circle person on yet, but
right.
I've heard about that being talked on other shows about how it's involved with
there's
crop circles.
beautiful video of those orbs flying all about in those formations.
Yeah.
All happening right underneath them. Absolutely beautiful.
Fascinating stuff, really. Well,
We've been studying it all for years.
I guess we're about out of time. Do you guys want to tell everybody where they can find you, where they can look up your book?
Yeah, certainly. You can always go onto our Facebook page. We're not very tech savvy, so we're old school, Facebook, Orbducted in the French Quarter, or you can find us personally, Alta Dillard. And we also sell on Etsy and eBay. So that's how you can find our book, either of those three ways. If you're in the French Quarter, you can always go by Earth Odyssey, where Alta works over the phone with them now. We're back in Alabama, but they're in the French Quarter, and that's where you can find us.
Well, we just would like to mention, if anybody is hearing us, we're always open to and very receptive to people sharing what they might be afraid to share with others or tell others. We've been through so much that we just feel that we're both very receptive to that. So we just would like for folks to know, that we are caring ears if anybody ever needs that.
Yeah, and the link to your Facebook page is going to be in the description box below. So everybody can find you. Just look in the description box below, and there it is. You'll be able to see it.
Just awesome.
Well,
we can't thank you enough, Michael. What an amazing time and lovely show that you've got going, and we'll scream your praises ever given an opportunity, and we just can't thank you enough for this time.
Well, it's a fascinating story, and I appreciate you coming on and sharing it with us all. Thank you very much.
We thank you. We look forward to the future with you, and take care. Listen, again, you ever get back down in this direction, let us know.
All right, sure will. And don't hang up just yet. Let me finish the show, and I'll talk to you a little bit off the air. I just want to remind everybody that you can always find us online. Just go to www.conflictradio.net. You can always find us on YouTube, of course. Look for Conflict Radio Official. We also have Conflict TV Official for when we're going to be doing some in the field stuff that's going to be on the Conflict TV channel. So be sure to go there. You can always find us on Apple, iTunes, and all of your normal podcast catchers. Until next time, batten down the hatches and be safe.